Good morning, folks. Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Legacy stream. Normally I stream on Sunday nights, but something came up this afternoon that I have to do that is maybe not going to put me in shape to stream this evening, so I'm making sure I get my content in this morning instead. So I got a donation from an anonymous donor who wanted me to play some Death and Taxes, and they left it up to me whether I would play a stock list or an experimental list. And when I got the donation, I was planning on just grabbing a stock list of either Yorion D&T or traditional D&T and giving it a go. And then over the last couple of weeks, every time the data dump has come from the challenge events, Death and Taxes has been putting up absolutely horrendous results. And I mean like 30% win rate levels of bad. And so I didn't just want to jump into a league with something that was stock and get absolutely bullied. And so I decided, well, if regular D&T isn't working for people, let's try something a little bit crazy and see how that goes. So we're going to break some of the sacred cows of D&T deck building today and try to play a more aggressive-oriented build. Right now, Legacy is a lot about tap out powerful cards. Oko, Dreadhorde Arcanist, and stuff of that nature. Everyone's favorite Elk Machine. Everyone's favorite Simic, Life Gain, Ramp, Inevitability Engine, all those sorts of things. So, keeping that in mind, we're going to try to play more of our own aggressive cards to end the game sooner or pressure our opponent to be dealing with our board rather than playing to their board. So we are going to do that by dropping a lot of our end game engine to have more early game plays and more cards that are going to be aggressive rather than reactive off of an Ether Vial. So we are dropping Flickerwisp and Recruiter of the Guard for Luminarch Aspirants and Serra Avengers. Our goal here is to be highly aggressive and putting +1/+1 counters on normally fragile bodies, on things with evasion, or things with first strike should allow us to attack through a lot of things that normally we could not. Now, is this going to be the, new face of Death and Taxes? No, probably not. The tried and true deck is probably going to do better, but I'm more interested in experimentation and seeing what sort of things do and do work than anything else right now. And if we're going to get bullied playing Death and Taxes, we might as well try to learn some things along the way. And this build will probably show us whether or not it's okay to tick the needle down a little bit towards aggression and away from controlling. Now, what specifically led me to drop Flickerwisps and Recruiter of the Guards? Because, those are obviously great cards, and I can't say enough good things about both of them. Something that I'm noticing about current Legacy is that it's really dangerous to do nothing for a turn. So, for example, Jeff Lynn, JTL, the face of the Esper Vial deck, recently came up with another deck that was a Living Wish-based deck. And the first thing that occurred to me when I saw that was, how on earth can you take a turn off to cast Living Wish right now? And that led me to think, how can I take a turn off to cast Recruiter of the Guard when my opponent is on 3 mana and does something like Uro or Oko or Dreadhorde Arcanist plus some other spell. So we are going to try to gain back a little bit of tempo by cutting some of our 3-drops. Now this is going to have costs. We're going to lose out on some selection by dropping Recruiter. And the only reason I'm comfortable trying a list without Flickerwisps is because I have a whole playset of Skyclave Apparition. And that card hits the board and has immediate impact. And a lot of times you can't really play Flickerwisp on turn 3 without a Vial. It does stuff, but it doesn't really do stuff. So we're going to see how this feels. As far as deck building goes, I've gotten a little bit greedier with the mana base on this list. Since we have a little bit less endgame inevitability, I'm dropping one Horizon Canopy into the list. And since I'm a little bit worse against control, I've added in the third Caracas so that we have another way to bounce an Uro. As far as the sideboard goes, I have the recruiters in the sideboard for the combo and control matchups where we want them, and we'll probably side them in versus another sort of deck as well. Otherwise, most of the rest of the stuff that's here is relatively stock for the sideboards. Folks on the YouTube end, please consider liking this video if you want to see more Death and Taxes content in the future. Thinking about running another D&T league as soon as Kaldheim hits, and we'll test whatever bad white creatures are in that set and see what they can do. Let's jump into some leagues. We're starting round one with a pretty strong opening hand that I will be keeping. I've also won the die roll, which is really good with this hand. So we get to start on Vial, and then based on what our opponent does, we can make decisions about our turn 2. We're hoping that they are a fair-ish deck. Our hand is very good versus fair strategies and pretty mediocre versus, like, say, something like Doomsday or Ant. Mirror? Probably Maverick, it looks like. Oh god, the Doomsday matchup is rough. Like, even when you try to win the Doomsday matchup, it's just like, alright, I have the Spirit of the Labyrinth and this Thalia, everything's fine. I cast Doomsday and win the following turn. Fuck. What is the line? There is some chance that our opponent is playing a Bant deck, so something that I do could get Force of Willed. I think I want to be able to activate Stoneforge Mystic next turn. I think that's what I'm gonna do. It also just guarantees that we don't draw the Batterskull next turn and then not cantrip off of our card. Yeah, so like the interaction Death and Taxes has versus Doomsday is kind of like the Doomsday player having to like casually step over a puddle. It's like, oh, that's in my way. I will have to wait one turn to go off. That's okay. A lot of the things that would be, you know, crippling versus Doomsday are just too expensive or not generic enough that they're good against other decks. Okay, that's fine. An Abrupt Decay would be really good from our opponent if they can decay the Vial. My opponent played around Mother of Runes by going and waiting there. Is pretty strong. In terms of mana efficiency, it's better to play a piece of equipment this turn in some ways. But I think I'm just going to put Aspirant onto the battlefield and then go for Jitte Equip next turn. That doesn't always work, because my opponent can play something like a Knight of the Reliquary that ends up being pretty large. But outside of that, I'm okay. And I'm also just building towards hard casting 3 pieces of equipment, and that tends to take over mid-range games pretty well. That's slightly inconvenient for me. That means I can't go Jitte equip. Oh, Sarah Vendor. Kind of a good draw. So this is a turn where you have to decide, am I winning this game by connecting with a Jitte, or am I winning this game by attacking? I would much, much, much rather Jitte equip in the same turn cycle. Because that surprise factor probably leads to me winning the game. Whereas if I play Jitte to the board and pass the turn this turn, my opponent just probably digs for a Green Sun or Abrupt Decay to answer it. Or even something like Assassin's Trophy. So I think I'm going to continue to just pressure my opponent's life total heavily in the face of Sylvan Library. And stay aggressive. I theoretically have 7 points of damage incoming next turn, which is a lot. I don't know that my opponent will get to draw any cards off the Sylvan Library unless they find some source of life gain. It's pretty dubious to do that in the face of this much damage, especially when a good portion of it is evasive. That is a great draw from our opponent. Yep. That makes sense. Aspirant is absolutely terrifying. Oh yeah, if I rip a land, this game is just over. I do not think that my opponent can come back from that. The 2-for-1 here is incredible. Yep. And this is what we played to last turn by taking this line. So there's a world where I want to be able to kill Skyclave Apparition to create another body. But I think removing that Noble Hierarch is really good. I'm going to leave the Thalia in play for a minute, which can be slightly punished by a draw of Caracas. However, leaving the Thalia in play for a little while so that my opponent is taxed by it is probably useful for this turn cycle, since Green Sun and Abrupt Decay are just very good draws. Alright. Well, that's pretty good against my hand. This is fine. Realistically, I have my opponent on a 3-turn clock because of the combination of these two cards. Ooh, my opponent found life gain. That's quite good for them. Oddly enough, there aren't that many creatures in the graveyard, despite how many creatures have been removed from play, because they're all being sent to the exile zone. Also, if at any point I spike a Source of Plowshares or a Skyclave Apparition, my board looks good. I get 2 draws towards that next turn, because I can cycle the Horizon Canopy. So this probably blows up a Batter Skull. And that leaves my opponent on a 1-turn clock. So let's go ahead and cycle this land now. Port's okay. What do I want to have in play if Collector Oof is removed? I'm probably just going to play the thing that costs more mana here. So this can't really be tapped for mana. I think I'm going to take my opponent off of white without using Horizon Canopy. This is also their only land that can't be used to eat here. Yeah, the Collector Oof is looking very strong here. It turned a game that was in dire straits for my opponent into totally manageable. My opponent needs to hit a removal spell off Sylvan Library or they are dead. Yep. There we go. So in round 1 here, the aggressive elements of the deck were looking good. I'm probably going to want this. Paths are a maybe. Rips are a maybe. Recruiters and Council's Judgments are going to be a yes. I am not going to want Thalia's. And even though my opponent has Sylvan Library, I'm probably not going to want Spirit of the Labyrinth. The rest of this stuff looks really good. So I am definitely playing those 4 cards, and then I get to keep 2 of these. And the question is, which one? Having Rest in Peace against these sorts of decks is pretty strong, because Knight of the Reliquary is a threatening-sized creature, and it also shuts off ancillary graveyard-based stuff, such as Life from the Loam, Ramunap Excavator, that sort of stuff. But on a lot of boards, the Rest in Peace kind of does nothing. So Rest in Peace allows you to save your removal spells for more threatening cards. But seeing as I have 4, 8, 9, 10 removal spells, I don't know that I want to board Rest in Peace this time. Yeah, Ooze is a great example of, like, ancillary graveyard-based cards, where, like, you're not really scared of it, but shutting it off is nice. I think I'm in a board like this. Again, Rest in Peace is totally reasonable. But I think I like how this looks. So we ended up with the the ability to sideboard into a deck that is slightly more slower and grindy. I'll keep this hand. I'm gonna need another white mana at some point this game, and the best draw I could have would be Ether Vial, but there's enough powerful thing going on here where I don't think I get to mulligan this. I think if my opponent plays Hierarch on 1, I'm supposed to Swords to Plowshare it with this hand. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. There are some hands where you have, like, one removal spell, but a bunch of really strong early plays. And sometimes when that happens, it's just better to... How do I say this? It's better to save your removal for something that is swingy later on and use your early turns to make better plays. I am going to flash in my... Isn't there like a 1/1 vanilla creature with flash that's white? I think my opponent has an Abrupt Decay. Oh, I also could have boarded out one piece of equipment. Sword of Fire and Ice is medium in this matchup. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the Batter Skull here. I think my opponent has Decay, but on the off chance that I'm wrong, forcing removal here is pretty good when I already have something that can ping smaller creatures. Oh, I'm super stoked about getting another land. Ah, Zealous Guardian, that is exactly the card I was thinking of, thank you. That is a big boy. Alexa666, thank you very much for following. Yeah, I don't want to get wastelanded, so I'm going to Path Knight. I think I'm going to Path Knight Mom Port, but I'm going to think about it for a sec. Because there's merit to putting Serra Avenger into play, so that if I rip a piece of equipment, I can Sword of Fire and Ice attack next turn. My opponent's on 2 cards. I think that's playing too aggressively, though. Says the man playing a deck dubbed Aggro D&T. Oh, my opponent has 2 basics? Oh god, that's savage. Parting the Scrub's a little awkward here because it contributes to mana for both Abrupt Decay and Path to Exile. Or Swords to Plowshares. Play nice and patiently here. Yeah, your Once Upon a Time is fine. This will actually give me information about what to port down. I assume I'm porting Scrubland, because Plague Engineer is very, very, very good right now. So, Verdant Catacombs can allow my opponent to cast a Plague Engineer. Or Knight of the Reliquary, that's fine. I'm gonna clock pretty damn hard. Sword Equip might be a trap. Like, I can do that next turn. This feels safer. Using the Mom here is kind of whatever. Because if my opponent has a path or whatever, they just do it in response. But this is fine. Like, I'm going to play Sword of Fire and Ice and shoot that. So my opponent kind of gets a 2-for-1 here, but unless their remaining card is exactly a 1 white removal spell, I get pretty sick value here. Palace Jailer is not particularly good right now because so many blue decks are good at combat. That's really the issue more so than anything else. It's not that it's fighting 1-for-1 with Skyclave's spot. We're going to take them off of white-white as well as black-black by doing this. It's that with, like, with Okos and all sorts of Ice Fang Coatls running around, it's just pretty rough to be trying to win via traditional combat. Or let me rephrase that. It's pretty rough to be trying to hold the Monarch when the blue decks are better in combat than they're used to being. Well, that's what I was going to tutor up, so that's just disgusting. Aggro. Taxes. Aggro. Taxes. Okay. I am keeping a solid opening hand that again is good against fair decks and not particularly good against combo. Alright. We are hoping that this is a Depths deck and not an Elves deck. Because we lose to Elves. And we beat Depths a good portion of the time. Oh, we're playing against Post. Why is Green Post so popular right now? It is everywhere. I want my opponent to sorcery speed activate Elvish Reclaimer so that I can wasteland them. No, I played Post recently, and I didn't feel like I just crushed Snoko the way that I crushed older control decks. No, the hope was that I could tag a Cloud Post. Get in there, Mom. This is aggro taxes. And I'm just going to have 6 through my opponent's turn. Like, I would remove an Elvish Reclaimer on site, unquestionably. The Elvish Reclaimer can be a 3/4 this turn. Yeah, I hosted Tony yesterday. He was doing well in the challenge or whatever it was he was playing. I'm going to be playing Wasteland and passing. It's really awkward. It gives up a lot of tempo, but if my opponent activates Elvish Reclaimer, they lose one of their lands, unless they fetch Forest, in which case that's kind of a win for me. And if my opponent doesn't activate Reclaimer, then, like, I have done nothing so that they do nothing. Alright, so we're going to be holding up this Wasteland for a while. And we're going to use double Luminarch Aspirant to create large bodies, I think. If my opponent, if in the previous turn cycle, if my opponent had tapped the 2 lands to Elvish Reclaimer and gotten a Cloud Post, I want the ability to take that off of the table so that they cannot Vesuva it. That's why Wasteland over Port. There are worlds where I just like Port. There are worlds where I get a Batterskull. I think my mana's really tight this game. I think I need to put a win condition into play this turn. That doesn't require more mana investment. And then I can Rashad and Port my opponent and just let this card take over the game on its own. Ooh, another Reclaimer. That's pretty good. Alright, so my opponent has found a wasteland so that they can wasteland my wasteland. And then activate Reclaimer in response. I think I have to Skyclave Apparition the active Reclaimer this turn, and then Wasteland my opponent. Game's a little weird. Luca, thank you very much for following. Hope you're enjoying the content. I'm not sure exactly what my opponent is thinking about. Man, I wish I had one more white mana. Gatro, thank you very much for following. Hope you're enjoying the content. I would like to save the Swords to Plowshares for as long as possible. But if I play Swords to Plowshares on the active Elvish Reclaimer, I can also play a second Luminarch Aspirant this turn, and Wasteland, and that's pretty good. The thing is that if they eventually get something big and dumb in play, Swords to Plowshares answers that, whereas Skyclave doesn't. I think I'm going to value trying to end this game. No activation, huh? That's interesting. Yeah, the thing is that if they cast a 10 drop, it takes out my two best things on board, which is probably going to be like a 10/10 Luminarch Aspirant at that point. Kind of think my opponent was supposed to activate the active Elvish Reclaimer, so that their current Elvish Reclaimer on board would turn into a 3/4. Why Wasteland here? Because Elvish Reclaimer isn't currently active, and my Wasteland is going to be bad in most other cases. Devastating? I'm attacking for 5 this turn and killing their one creature that's left on board. Like, Mom had almost no text anyway. I see. I needed to win harder. That makes sense. Luminarch Aspirant is unplayable, he says as he gets hit for 5. It's unplayable as he gets hit for 6. It's unplayable as he gets hit for 7. I'll go ahead and put this counter here. That way, next turn I can put another counter here, and then it attacks through an Elvish Reclaimer. 2, 3, 4, 5. My opponent could theoretically get to 7 next turn if they have Ancient Tomb, and then all is dust me. Then I have a wall. No, then they have a 1/1. Yeah, I mean, someone wins in the next turn cycle, in all likelihood. And it could be me, it could be them. Alright, that's scary amounts of mana now. See if we get Ugin. All is dusted. Oh, wow. They were sitting on nothing all game. That's rough. And they even got to... They cantripped once, right? I could have sworn there was a once upon a time. Oh, that was last round. I mean, that is something that happens to the non-blue decks. Sometimes they just, like, hit the fail rate. Surgicals we can consider to take out Cloud Posts. It's like, Sword of Feast and Famine is probably better than one of these two. Both of them are pretty mediocre. At the Exile is kind of good. Kind of. Recruiters and Council's Judgments are fine. Well, it's too awkward. You're not really shutting off that many things. You shut off, like, one of the most devastating things, but the cost is you're playing a 2/2 that does nothing the vast majority of the time. So, Mom's not really great. We're not shutting off removal most of the time. Every once in a while, there's something like Dismember, but a lot of times things like Spatial Contortion are more common. And this is also just something that isn't particularly strong in most cases. Yeah, I mean, Thalia is not great. Spirit of the Labyrinth is not great. Post is a deck that I'm looking to beat in the early turns of the game because they tend to outpace my mana denial as the game goes on. Berserker King, there's a couple of different builds, so the answer is maybe, which is why I'm bringing in the Path to Exiles. I think on the draw, I'm going to go down 1 Thalia. On the play, I'm going to keep the Thalia. And one of the primary reasons is that when you're on the... Hell yeah! When you're on the draw, they have the opportunity to play a turn 2 Grim Monolith off like 2 normal lands before you get your hate piece down, and then playing Athalia after that looks really awkward. SCK, thank you very much for that support. That's huge, and I very much appreciate it. Oh, and you hit a lot of channel regulars there as well. Now Min and Pokimoki can enjoy some emotes. Ah, I drew a Lotus Petal. I think I'm going to go ahead and try to get a better land than Glimmerpost with my 1 remaining Wasteland. It's possible I should just try to stick my opponent on 1 land here. And Vesuva is a huge reason why that might be a good idea. But I think I'm going to take 1 turn off to put my Ether Vial in play. So this presumably gets a Cloud Post. More than anything else right now, I would like to draw Rishadenport. Horizon Canopy. So I'm going to tag the Cloud Post with this Wasteland. I don't think I'm going to play it out this turn to let them know that's coming. I think I'm just going to hold up double Swords to Plowshares, question mark, and pass the turn. The only awkward thing is that I don't really have the opportunity to play around a crop rotation well. Because of crop rotation specifically, I believe I'm supposed to let my opponent untap the Cloud Post and Wasteland in their upkeep. Yep, that's fine. Like, that was going to get us most of the time anyway, but by waiting to do it on my opponent's turn, this Cloud Post enters tapped, and it's like I traded my Wasteland for a card in their hand. That's acceptable. Tiered hand, they were in the sideboard. I've boarded them in. It's a little rough. And this is what I mean about Cloud Post eventually outpacing Mana Denial. Three, 6, 7, 8 mana next turn. I don't have Flickerwisp. Wisp would be very, very good here. I don't have a Revoker to just grab for a Planeswalker. This turn's awkward. So I think what I'm going to do is a classic thing that you often do versus control, is that I'm going to Recruiter or a Recruiter, and then after I see what my opponent does, I'll figure out what tool I need to get. If I just do something like Recruiter for Stoneforge, play Stoneforge, and then my opponent just removes the Stoneforge, that's pretty embarrassing for me. No, Post tends to go over the top of Death and Taxes, especially when they're on the play. Well, that's a Primeval Titan. So the good news is that I can answer Primeval Titan. The bad news is my opponent's going to grab Eye of Ugin, and I currently don't have an answer to that. Plus Tabernacle. Strong. Alright. What I'm going to do here is thin a card out of my deck. I think I need to draw a Wasteland this turn, or I lose the game. I'll be sacrificing both my Recruiter of the Guards. Those don't matter here. Yeah, I am on a 2-outer. I have 2 Wastelands remaining in the deck. I get 2 draws. I'm not going to pull up the hypergeometric calculator to take a look at it, but I don't like the numbers. Alright, how bad is this? My opponent has 1 floating. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess I don't have to concede yet. But we're done though. I'm not winning this one. My opponent has 1 land. They get Ulamog this turn. But I can bounce the Ulamog. Everything will not be fine. Okay, that's my opponent getting Ulamog, so I'm gonna go ahead and concede. So on the play, I want my last Thalia and swap it for like a Spirit of the Labyrinth or something. Actually, maybe the Recruiter of the Guard is not good. Like, without Flickerwisps to get. Yeah. Maybe let's not play Recruiter of the Guard. Let's just drop that for another aggressive creature. Recruiter of the Guard can get Skyclave Apparition, which sometimes takes out an Elvish Reclaimer, and that's cool, but eh. We're looking for an Aether Vial hand that has like 2 pieces of mana disruption. Yep. This hand is fine. It becomes very good with a white source. Very, very good. Ito, thank you very much for following. Yeah, like shit can go down. Like we can just get Pithing Needled or something like that and everything's ruined. I think I just want to Wasteland this because of Vesuva specifically. I am going to put in so much pressure off of this Aether Vial. I will not be casting a Luminarch Aspirant. Boarding is just going to be better, and then I get my mana out of Vial in each turn cycle. This is actually a pretty sick spot because we probably keep my opponent from tutoring in this turn cycle. Good God. It is indeed, Ito. Medea is one of my favorite characters from classical mythology. Yeah, our board position was already really good, but the Wasteland off the top was just... The Hackbert, no, not here. So the times that you most frequently want to do that are like a jump between 1 and 3 or 2 and 4 or something like that. But we don't need to be doing that with this deck. Luminarch Aspirant's bad! Don't play Luminarch Aspirant! Oh god, why? No! No, Hackbird, I knew what you meant, but like you usually don't need to activate an Ether Vial in response to your own Vial trigger unless you need to be making Vial drops at weird numbers. Do this, I think, like this. I don't have lethal this turn. I'm one short of lethal. We done? Seems like we're done. Okay, so this is an opening hand. That is fine. It has lands and spells, but nothing about this hand is really overly exciting. I think this one is borderline a mulligan, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. Like, I don't really have enough gas for a control deck, and I'm really soft to Wasteland versus Delver. But this hand becomes pretty good versus Delver if I draw one land, and if I'm playing against a combo deck, I have one of my few hate bears. Alright. We shall see what they name. Double Vengevine in the graveyard is spooky. I could hold up Swords to Plowshares for the worst case scenario, where my opponent plays double 1-drop next turn. But they name Brainstorm. But I don't think I beat a lot of the worst case scenarios anyway. Morning, Jerry. Yeah, Stitcher Supplier first hit Cabal Therapy, and then the second time got double Vengevine. Alright. That's it's about the worst case scenario. There's now another Cabal Therapy in the graveyard. There's another Bloodghast in the graveyard. And my opponent is about to Cabal Therapy me for maybe Swords to Plowshares, maybe Stoneforge. Probably Swords to Plowshares, though. Yeah, I don't expect to win most of the game ones versus Hogaak. Like, it happens, but you're pretty reliant on the 6-ish pieces of graveyard hate that you play in order to do stuff against them. Okay, so they're gonna let me have Swords to Plowshares. Oh yeah, their opener was good, and they hit pretty well off of the random mill things. I don't have double white here. I can't mom and source the plowshares. How can I win this game? I think the only world where I win this game is where my opponent, like, doesn't have another land and doesn't mill anything into the graveyard that's relevant. And then, oh god, that's a Hogaak. Um, this is probably the point where I can just concede. Like, my opponent has Hogaak. Hogaak's a zombie, right? No, it's an avatar. Alright, yeah, they're getting Hogaak plus another Revenge Vine this turn. We can call that good. I know what their deck looks like, so I don't need to wait to see those last couple of cards milled. RIP! Okay. Surgical's great. Sort of Feast and Famine is a thing that I'll need to think about. Path to Exile's great. Rest in Peace is great. And then there's other things that we can theoretically be thinking about. I'm only on 4 pieces of Graveyard Hate in this list. I don't have a Containment Priest or anything that's tutorable. I think I cut that about 30 seconds before going live. I think I am going to board in Feast and Famine. I have a lot of pretty medium-looking cards. Spirit of the Labyrinth gets stalled really easily by things on the other side of the battlefield. I'm probably going to cut Sword of Fire and Ice since I'm bringing in Feast and Famine. We're not playing this for the discard, and in fact, that portion will sometimes be a downside. We're playing this because we have 4 Luminarch Aspirants, and the way that we win a lot of these games is by making a large creature, giving it protection with Mom or Sword of Feast and Famine, and crashing in for lethal damage. Yeah, Thalias are Like, Thalia on the play is acceptable. Thalia on the draw is kind of loose. I don't know about this. Like, maybe I should trim, like, a few other things instead. File in the matchup's okay. Like, it lets you dedicate mana towards disruption, which is nice. I would accept this as a 6 pretty happily. But I don't think I keep this on 7. Alright, we're an aggro hand. This is not the sort of hand that I was hoping to keep, but it's happening. Let's go. You asked the question, who's the beatdown? The answer is me. It's me. I'm the beatdown. Yeah, like, Vial is almost never one of your better cards versus combo. And if you're playing against a combo deck and you have the opportunity to play a hate card or a Vial, you play the hate card. Ooh, that's strong. But Vial allows you to dedicate mana to things like porting that otherwise you normally couldn't do. And this is a great example of that. Ooh, a Force of Vigor. Force of Vigor's quite good. Luckily, we have another Vial, but this is a pretty big tempo hit for me. So on my next turn, I can Vial plus Wasteland, and that's a good turn. But if my opponent just has another land here, brings back a couple of Bloodghasts, Cabal therapies me, things start to look pretty bad. Excuse me, Hogaak costs how much? 7? Fuck! Alright, my opponent made Hogaak on turn 2. That's better than everything that's going on with my hand by a lot. I don't need to concede yet. But we're real close. Can't remember if Hogaak tramples. Good news, it does. Wait, hold on, is that good news? That's not good news? Oh. Okay. Yeah, opponent's hand was good. I feel comfortable in saying that. The hand was poggers, just not for me. Or something. Like, I'd be pretty stoked if I were them. Like, that Stitcher's Supplier was dope. I need to draw a removal spell of some nature for Hogaak this turn. Caracas is probably ideal. And I think any other thing from my opponent here just, like, breaks me. Yeah, that's fine. They're pretty unlikely to hit the first time. Like, Sarah Avenger is not the sort of card that you name on this board. Like, I can't Violet in, and I can't cast it. So they're much more likely to name... Actually, it's really hard to tell what they should name here. Because normally you default to something like Swords to Plowshares, but I probably would have used that on a Hogaak rather than take 8 from it, so you don't name that here. And I probably would have played like a Stoneforge over Luminarch Aspirant. You don't necessarily need to name the white cards. Yeah, SCK, their turn 2 was good. I'd probably take 10 this turn. Oh, only taking 8 this turn is way better. Well, not even 8, because I'll just tap Mom and protect some. We took 6 instead of 10. That's a pretty big game. Removal spell for Hogaak? Well. We are not the beatdown here. Luminarch Aspirant just like sponging up damage here. Well, what if I draw something that's 3 mana? I would like to be able to cast it, right? They don't really have anything that they can do with the mana at instant speed. So it's totally fine to be porting over Wastelanding. God, Luminarch Aspirant might steal this game. Like, we're in, like, Hogaak size category now. I don't think I can just put everything in front of the bus here. I think this is going to be okay. I have more 2s than 3s to hit, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this at 2. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. I might get there. Am I the beatdown now? Like, am I crashing in with the aspirant too? I have 2 blockers back for double Bloodgust. I think I'm the beatdown. I don't think my opponent is going to have something like a Flusterstorm. I'm just going to do this now before they draw another card. Bridge from below is not bad for them. This is slightly awkward for me. I wonder if it's correct to let my mom die. So that I clear that bridge. Hasty Bloodghast's coming back. And then creating more things from bridges is kind of big game. I don't think this matters, but I really need to rip something here. That's a Batter Skull next turn. That is quite potent. Well, actually, I think I messed up. I think I was supposed to sorcery speed Violin that Stoneforge so I could turn it into a 2/3. Yeah, I caught that about half a second too late. I think it's irrelevant too. That's relevant if my opponent hits the land. Okay, they have a Hogaak. Oh yeah, there's a lot of lands in their graveyard. Caracas. Okay, so what the fuck do I do now? Opponent is at 13. If my opponent plays a land and gets 2 hasty Bloodghasts, I can block 3 of their creatures, and I take 4 and go to 1. That's if I Path to Exile Hogaak. Alternatively, I can put Batterskull in, turn Batterskull into a 5/5. Batterskull blocks Hogaak, so I take 3 damage from Hogaak. I can block everything else that's on the board. I need to Path to Exile Hogaak. I have them dead next turn to Serra Avenger in the air. And if I Path Hogaak, it should be pretty hard for me to die. Go ahead and put this counter here. Awkwardly, this does give my opponent landfall for Hogaak, or for Hedron Crab, but hopefully that doesn't matter. We just put a counter on Serra Avenger, and we win. Failed to find a basic. Nice! Oh, that's also very good. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone that Luminarch Aspirant is unplayable and not worth testing. Yeah, Pokemokey. I think if I make one more mistake that game, I don't win that game. Like, I missed putting the +1/+1 counter on my Stoneforge Mystic by like a quarter of a second. And I was like, oh shit, I should have done that. And I think I got the pass on that one. But if I would have done any other mistake, I don't think I win. Um, Lane, I don't think they wanted to give up the value on their Bloodghast when they had the Hedron Crab in play that can potentially turn the corner on the game. And if they mill a Bridge from Below or a Cabal Therapy or something, it's better for them to have it in play. So while from my perspective, it looked like that Bloodghast should have been attacking because like I was very scared of like losing the game by individual life points. From their perspective, things probably look very different. I think I have to keep this hand, and I throw back one of Skyclave or Sword. I think I need to throw back the Sword. I'm going to be really tight on mana this game. I'm not super excited about this hand. I don't really have any pressure. I have some hate, which is good, but without pressure, eh. I don't know how many trophies they're playing these days. It's something that's going to be on my mind, but I think preserving my life total is more important. The one thing historically that like I don't usually do is I don't usually play these cards. Because my life total is so valuable. Oh, I'm actually super happy to draw planes. As soon as I think it's in danger of coming into play, I'm going to Surgical Hogaak. But I'm going to give my opponent the opportunity to draw more of them first. My opponent cast a Cabal Therapy on me, like we're emergency. Uh, We're emergency surgicaling. And then in response to this fetch, I will search the Plowshares, Hedron Crab. My opponent is wisely not fetching. Man, maybe I can slow roll this game and try to get Bridge from Below. With Surgical instead, I do have Caracas. I don't want my opponent to play another fetch land and then get massive, massive value out of their crab. So I might just want to Swords of Plowshares now. I'm going to give them their 3 more cards in graveyard. I don't want my opponent to play a zombie. My opponent plays a zombie, I have to consider. Yeah, that's fine. That gets Skyclaved. Okay, my hand was not great. My opponent's hand didn't really end up going anywhere. They milled a good number of cards, but not anything super relevant. Yeah, so I think I just let them do that and bounce the Hogaak. I think I lose this game to, like, Bridge from Below or Random Vengevines getting into play, not to Hogaak. Patience. Patience. Does Horizon Canopy a card yet? Horizon Canopy might be a card. I think this Horizon Canopy is a card. I don't think I am currently the beatdown, so I don't think I need to bounce Hogaak and attack for 2. I think I want to hold this back to prevent taking 1 point of damage to Stitcher's Supplier. I think Gravecrawler is supposed to attack there. I'm not going to block with the Skyclave Apparition and give you a creature of a different color. And even if I do block this, like, you recast it. Oh, baby. Okay, I don't know that we need all of these Mother of Runes. We need something like a Luminarch Aspirant or a Stoneforge Mystic to close the game. Our opponent has something wonky like a Plague Engineer in their deck. It's pretty devastating for me. But short of that, like, we've got the squad. Yeah, I used a lot of brain power in game 2. Alright. You have a Vengevine? I don't really know that attacking with one creature gets you anything. Hey, buddy! You have another Vengevine? You do. Con89, thank you very much for following. Hope you're enjoying the content. Oh, this is, like, literally the card that I wanted to draw. That's the exact one. So now I have offense and defense covered simultaneously. Morning, Harry. I don't actually expect my opponent to have Plague Engineer. That was like, what is the absolute worst case scenario thing that could happen? Nice. One land short of, like, just sort of feast and famining this turn. I think I'm just gonna grab Jete. It's somewhat likely that my opponent has a Force of Vigor or something at this point. Like, they gotta have something in their hand. Sure, an Abrupt Decay, that's fine. My opponent's dead to Zero Avenger next turn. Remember, folks, Luminarch Aspirant is bad. Not a playable Magic card. Not even worth testing. All right, round 4. Currently 3-0. I'll be keeping this hand. We have a solid mix of things. That will let us play ball against most decks. Please don't be elves, please don't be elves, please don't be elves, please don't be elves. Alright, we're gonna play against Hogaak again. Buckle up, folks! We're doing it again! Hater, I am not playing in the challenge. When I advertised, what I meant was, like, people who are playing Death and Taxes in the challenges are doing exceptionally poorly right now. And so that might... Oh, holy fuck. Welp. We're done? Fuck, man, that was good. Like, I was scared when it was just triple bridge and 2 Bloodghast, but the Hogaak hitting play there was pretty clutch. I could play Stoneforge Mystic, fetch Batter Skull, and rip Caracas off the top of the library. And still be in this game. I will let them know that I'm Death and Taxes. In order to play towards that line. It's pretty unlikely. Like 3 draws in 51, but... I took a Hedron Crab out of play. However, my opponent still did the thing. I don't like this, but this match probably comes down to, like, single points of life if I can somehow stay alive. Oh, that's the 3rd bridge, too. Okay. Now, maybe I can draw Aspirant next turn? Oh god, the Bloodghasts are coming. Alright, so this is why I blocked last turn. I am at 11 instead of 10, so these aren't hasty. I need an adult. Help. um... Okay. Let's play like we have outs. I don't think I do, but let's play as if we do. I'll make the Batterskull survive so the Batterskull can attack in. Take 8, go to 3. I can go back to 7 on the attack, which means I can go back to 11 total. Okay. I think the trample just does me in here. But maybe my opponent won't attack with everything. Like, I can play towards that world. I have to leave up single white in order to do that, to represent swords to plowshares. In which case, can block Vengevine, be at 11, 2, 4, 6. Or less. Can't take out the Hogaak. If I tap out for the Skyclave, then I'm not representing a path. Alright, I think I'm comfortable throwing in the towel here. It's not like we weren't so far away from like making the game meaningful, but close. Yeah, Skyclave isn't quite Oblivion Ring. So I think we went yes, yes. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. I think we left these on the board. I'll have to double check. What did I end up doing? I think I went Thalia's out. Spirit's out. Sword of Fire and Ice out. Looks about right. Life pro tip about anyone who is like going to get serious about death and taxes. Whenever you build a list, if you are building it for like a true competitive event, make sure you like write yourself a sideboard guide, figure out your in-out numbers, make sure that everything makes sense. I'm ecstatic about this as a 6-card hand. I think I'm going to keep this. We're going to be good against Hedron Crab based openers. And we're going to be bad against openers that Swords to Plowshares is soft against. Yeah, Lord Darkview, I don't necessarily love hyper-aggressive decks like this all the time, but The traditional lists aren't working for people right now. It's had just awful numbers in like challenges and such recently, and so if the traditional thing isn't working, you need to try something new. Don't force a vigor me. No, I'm going to offer up the second one to force a vigor. If they have it, they have it, and it sucks. But if they don't have it, it's important for me to put it into play now. All right, now let's just like draw a Rest in Peace or some other strong hate card and go to town. When I conceptually was drawing up the idea, I wanted Crusaders to be in this list, and then I realized with Skyclave Apparition being a 3 or 4 of in the deck now, like, you just don't have room to fuck around with shit anymore. That's some spooky stuff in the graveyard. Yeah, I think there was one time where I wanted to tutor up a Flickerwisp. There's one game versus Post where it would have been strong. Ooh, they're Cabal Therapy-ing targeting themselves. Alright, they have a Bloodghast and a Vengevine in hand. God, Rest in Peace off the top would be so bonkers. Yeah, Luminarch Aspirant Skyclave Apparition. I wonder if it was correct for my opponent to get rid of their Hedron Crab. That's not Rest in Peace. Okay, so that's the second black creature for Hogaak. Yeah, I know, drawing Rest in Peace would have been something that a better player than I am would have done, but you're stuck with me. Oh god, I drew another Vengevine. That's fair. That's fair, opponent. I respect that. I also think it's over. Alright, we weren't drawing Rest in Peace that game. Alright, I am on the draw with a hand that needs another land, and I'm not gonna risk that. This hand is fine. It's good against fair stuff and bad against unfair stuff, which is often the norm. Playing a mirror. Oh, thank God they let on Mom instead of Vile. Alright, I assume Stoneforge gets Jete here. So I want this Mom to be active. And I think that's worth playing off curve. This means that I can't double spell on turn 3, which sucks. But if my opponent doesn't have Swords to Plowshares or yeah, fuck. Alright. Alright, I'm gonna lose to a lot of things here. I'm going to lose to Caracas or another Swords to Plowshares in the next turn cycle. Oh, they had the Batterskull. Alright. I need them to not have the 4th land. That way I can create a 4/4 Thalia that can first strike and kill the Batterskull. If they have the 4th land, life is not good for me. Life is very not good for me if they have the 4th land. Fuck! Fuck! I'm gonna trade the 2-for-1 here. It feels really bad. But I think the way that I get back in this game is ripping a Skyclave Apparition to take that Jitte off the table. I don't think I win in a lot of other worlds. It's okay. The mirror doesn't come around to, like, one person just getting active Jitte online and it's a non-game nearly as often as it used to. So, like, this is not really frustrating. Alright, I think I'm gonna just concede if I don't hit Backlave this turn. Well, alright. That clears a lot of Jitte counters. Okay, well, that's just a 1/2. You already have all the equipment. No cantripping for you. I don't know that that's actually a good use of a Skyclave. Like we're in like dumpster time where I'm dead. But I might have sandbagged that card. Like, you have plenty to do with your mana between equipping these two pieces of equipment. I don't know that you need to do that to just aggressively get rid of a pile. Alright. I'll play Recruiter and Council's Judgment for sure. Path to Exile and a fourth piece of equipment are things that I can be thinking about. I have Thalias and Spirit of the Labyrinths that are bad. So I theoretically want to board 6 cards. Now that said, there are worlds where I can consider keeping either Thalia or Spirit of the Labyrinth to help out with aggressive starts. This is 21 creatures, which is light, but not unacceptable. Possible the second path should be like 1 Thalia or something. This hand doesn't really do anything. Oh god. What we're keeping. I'm pretty likely to have a non-game here. If I don't have a non-game, this hand could develop well. But it's pretty likely that I lose this vial in turn 3 and then the game ends. I think this is better than going to 5. But it's rough to, like, lose a set after sort of a rough mulligan situation. So what I'm thinking about here, because it's probably not obvious, is that there's a world where I am supposed to Vial Mom in on 1 in my upkeep, tick Vial up to 2, so that next turn I can tick Vial up to 3 and Skyclave away their apparition, their Vial, hoping that I lock 3 drops in hand, giving me time to draw mana for Stoneforge Mystic. I shouldn't have activated this now in a lot of worlds. But there's some weird scenarios where I am just, like, absolutely terrified of Containment Priest, where I'm supposed to activate this on my main phase. I don't know if I should have just done the, like, double mom situation and try to keep the board locked down a little stronger. Yeah. This is what I was afraid of in keeping the hand. That, like, the Vial was going to die and then we have a non-game. I can still top deck a White Source this turn. I can still hardcast a Jitte this turn. So my opponent Rashad imports me in the next turn cycle. Then I need to rip another successive land. Then I can protect with mom, get in there, kill both of their moms. Oh no! All right. Oh, I'm 100% going for it, Darkview. I have to. I think I have to try and get two Jitte counters this turn that kill both Mother of Runes. And then eventually draw two white sources for Skyclave Apparition. Swords. Oh, okay. You have a Revoker? Like, oh, a Relic Order. That's pretty savage. Okay, I think we can safely concede here. My opponent is going to have active Jitte plus 2 Mother of Runes, and I have no castable cards in hand. Yeah, I don't think Leonin Relic Order is a great card in the current meta. Like, it's a reasonable sideboard bullet, but I don't think it's strong. Okay. So, 3-2 is an acceptable result for a league. That's totally fine. Aspirant did disgusting things all stream. Sarah Avenger was solid as well. So, like, the cards that I was playing over other reasonable Death and Taxes cards were good. And the deck felt strong every round, which is something important to keep in mind. Because, like, I went 3-2 in this league. That's a 60% win rate. That's totally respectable. But, you know, I just as easily could have 5-0'd or 4-1 or 2-3'd or whatever. So, like, don't take results from, like, a sample size of one league or anything like that. But the cards that I was playing today felt powerful in a lot of different situations and rounds versus varying archetypes. And so if you're frustrated with current builds of D&T, exploring something that's a bit more aggressive, but also has, like, some amount of grinding potential in the sideboard might be a reasonable way to do that. For those of you watching on the YouTube end, if you made it this far, please comment if you have any thoughts about deck building, and if you haven't already liked the video, I really would appreciate it. And we're trying to get to 3K subs too, so, like, you know, think about it. Have a great rest of the day, YouTube folks.